Chapter 2.5 Architecture, Part 4. So we're going to take a moment and go to Japan and look at some post and beam wooden architecture. So not all cultures evolved the same. Mostly we've been looking at sort of Western art history. And now we're going to look at Japanese architecture. And Japan is a country that rains every single day. And the trees grow quite fast, so there's a lot of wood. There's not very much stone. Chinese architecture has a lot of stone. They don't have a lot of trees. So that's one way, like the roof styles can be similar, but you'll see a big difference there. So we're going to look at post and beam construction. And this is quite complex, and you can see how the weight, when we were talking about tensile strength and we're talking about compression, the compression is displaced. So we have the roof up here going against a post here, and there's a beam here, and that post hits this beam, that's displaced across another beam and then downward. So wood is a different material than what we looked at with the Egyptians and the Greeks. They were using stone, and now we're going to look at wood construction, which is actually what most homes and small structures in the U.S. are made of now. But at this time, at the 7th century, that was not the case, in many places. That wood was kind of unique. Most people were stacking and piling using brick or using stone. So in this wood architecture, you can see the wood beams here. That's like a whole tree trunk that's refined, and then the displaced weight of these eaves coming out. This pagoda here, you can't access these top two floors, but the look of it is impressive, and that was kind of the point. Its durability, now, not all cultures, or not all, I should say, climates, will support wood buildings for the long haul. In Japan, they do pretty well, but in some cases, there is a rebuilding and a constant structuring of the wood or replacing the wood. We're going to go now to Agra, India. The Taj Mahal, perhaps you've seen images of this, gorgeous white marble, just absolutely stunning. And different times of the day, it takes on the colors of the sunrise and sunset. Just an absolutely stunningly gorgeous building. And we see there are these sort of side structures on either side. Everything is about symmetry. It's about these archways. It's about refinement. It is a mausoleum or a burial structure, and it has a lot of issues in terms of the water changing, this Yamuna River, which is right here, changing up and down and creating some inconsistency with this soil underneath. There are pilings underneath it originally, and that has been maintained over many years, but there is some worry that it will not withstand the test of time. It's a masterpiece of Islamic symmetry. It's created as a symbol of love. Mumtaz Mahal died during childbirth. She was the favorite wife of the ruler at that time, and he wanted a black mausoleum built across the other side of the river when he passed, but of course his sons decided to just take the money, not build it, which is quite sad. Okay, so we're going to get into classic architectural styles. Remember, we have our Greek and Roman, and when we get into the Renaissance, remember, that means rebirth, and what is being reborn is the classical Greek and Roman spirituality, architecture, painting, sculpture, everything. Okay, so it's revived again in the mid 18th century, once again in neoclassicism. So there's Renaissance, and then 200 years later, we get into neoclassicism, and they look quite a bit different. So Donato Bramante does the Tempietto of San Pietro. This is in Rome. This is a Renaissance architect, and this is supposedly where St. Peter was believed to have been crucified. What's interesting about Rome and parts south is that a lot of the biblical stories are played out in those actual spaces, and it is believed that these certain structures have relics of the dead apostles and other personages, saints, and so on. And the structures were built to house them. This is our Tempietto of San Pietro, and we can see how we have our columns that have come back. These are our Doric or simplified columns. We don't have any ornamentation here, but we have a lot of different elements that if we recall from the beginning of this chapter. Now we're looking at the Chiswick House, and this is 1729. And if you think about the timing running up to the Revolution in the American history, we get into about 50 years later, we become our own country. But what happens is there's the Baroque, which comes after the Renaissance, and then the Rococo, and then we go to Neoclassicism. Because the Rococo is really over the top, it's incredibly ornate, and it has to do with incredible wealth and frippery and details that are insupportable unless you have a lot of money. So the idea of democracy is being formed, and this revisiting of the concepts of Greek and Roman times, the idea of the Senate, and the idea of a president, electable person as opposed to a ruler, all that stuff is fomenting at this time, and they wish to show within architectural pieces as well as other artworks, but in architecture here in England, there is as well this neoclassicism where they're showing these temple-like structures from the Greek and Roman era. Now we're going to get into the 19th century, and we see iron, steel, and concrete. Architects are experimenting with different ways of controlling tension and compression. This particular house, the stick style house, is using balloon framing, which is, if we think about our Japanese example of the wood framing, this is a wood structured house. We have a brick chimney and some stone foundation, but the rest of this is made out of wood with glass. Notice the windows are small because this is built before large windows were made. Panes were quite small. It was all hand-blown glass and then flattened. 1832. A lot of decoration. And then we get into cast iron architecture. This is sort of the precursor to steel used in architecture. So molten iron is now cast in these large molds. We have a lot of iron, and we're casting these different sort of frameworks. So it wasn't until the 18th century you couldn't get that much of large fire without more equipment and technology. And I know we don't think of 1851 as being high tech, but this is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and lots of things are being developed. So this is all iron, and this is what the structure is made out of, and then there's glass. This was the Crystal Palace in London, and this was put up as an exhibition space for all the wonders happening all over the globe. Different delegations brought in their specific, unique crafts and the exploration of different technologies. So this is the beginning of the World's Fair, but at this time that's not what it was called. So it was the Great Exhibition, 1851. Victoria and Albert put this on. And it's similar to the Eiffel Tower, although the Eiffel Tower does not have glass. Steel frame construction starts to happen. Now this is stronger and less brittle. It has more tensile strength. It is not, it is able to bend, and it is able to be smaller amounts of steel to do the same job that iron was doing. So now we can get into height. We can get into expansion. We can get into floors that are open without a bunch of columns supporting. right? Now, this building, the Wainwright building, is a transitional building, and by that I mean it was a steel building. It's the first one, it's the first modernist building, but it was still built in a time aesthetically in 1890 where people were used to the buildings looking more stone like. So it's faced in stone, meaning all this structure on the exterior is stone and stonework. So it was meant to look like a stone building and blend in, excuse me, with other structures that were made previously. But it has an elevator, and that was another means toward making buildings taller, the elevator and steel construction. So he's the father of modernism. This is our first skyscraper, although it doesn't appear to us now, but that's what it is. And function, it's all about function with modernism.